Today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. The team of professionals at the Tax Defense Group are passionate about helping taxpayers resolve their tax debt. Their services include basic tax preparation, tax audits, resolving large tax debt, and more. They actively represent taxpayers throughout the entire USA. If you need help resolving your tax issues, contact the Tax Defense Group. Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973 to get started. That number again is 800-850-7973, and you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Are you thinking about starting a business or a side hustle? For all businesses to be successful, you need a website. Writer Junkie offers website development, content writing, and SEO services for business websites. Call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. We recently launched our website, ucaststudios.com. With articles about sports, special interest topics, and more, we have some cool stuff on our site. To read our content, please visit ucaststudios.com. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Lakers Outsiders Weekly Podcast, brought to you by UCast Studios. I'm your host, Gary Kester, here with you as always, and I'm joined again today by Honi Ahmadian. Honi, number one, I gotta ask, are you ready for these playoffs? And number two, how's your day going?
Oh, that was a lot nicer than I thought it was. Day's going pretty good. I've done nothing except watch sports today. Watch some play-in action, watch some soccer action. So doing pretty well there, but I'm 100% just hyped up for these playoffs. It's been 7 years since we've seen the Lakers in the playoffs, but I would like to count it as 8 years because I don't want to remember that year. So we'll say 8 years since we've seen the Lakers in the playoffs.
It was like pre-NBA Twitter days. This is like the first NBA Twitter playoff appearance. And of course, there's no actual fans allowed in attendance.
Yeah.
Go figure. But do you want to know why today has been a good day?
I have a guess. Sounds like somebody got their hands on a little bit of a Popeye's chicken sandwich.
You are 100% correct. We didn't wait till the end to squeeze it in there, but I did. That was my lunch today, and man. I still am just on cloud nine because of that. So shout out to Popeyes and the chicken sandwich. Still not paying us for it, but whatever.
Yeah, shout out to our bank accounts once they finally start paying us for all this free publicity we're giving them. God.
It's either that or they're going to sue us for like, hey, we didn't authorize you to hype up our product like that. We don't need your help. It's been a good day. I mean, we had some basketball on. Popeye's chicken sandwich, pretty good. It's Saturday. By the time we're recording this, at least it's Saturday, and we're getting ready for the playoffs, obviously. So for the first half of this podcast, we're going to talk about the Lakers' first-round matchup because now we officially know who their opponent is. And in the second half, we're going to talk about their overall path to the finals and ultimately an NBA if they can accomplish that and get it done. So as always, guys, before we jump in, be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts. You can follow Lakers Outsiders and UCast Studios. You can subscribe to us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram, just at Lakers Outsiders, and you can like us on Facebook and get all of our content up on LakersOutsiders.com. And you can follow Honi on Twitter, just at HONIAHM or at Raptors Outsiders. You can follow me on Twitter at Gary Kester. So let's jump in. I mean, we know the first round matchup now. We've kind of assumed it for a while, but it is officially confirmed that the Lakers will start the playoffs against the Portland Trail Blazers, who have been pretty hot lately and have kind of been in playoff mode. And they're coming off of a stretch in these bubble games where they were fighting for their lives and they managed to fight their way in. So how concerned should Laker fans be about this?
Zero. Next question.
I did not expect that at all.
So, I think the Blazers are 100% the toughest team they could have drawn in the first round, just because Damian Lillard is incredible and he's in just the greatest form of his life right now and destroying every team that comes across him. But I look at their defense, man, and the Blazers just cannot stop anybody. And they couldn't stop the Grizzlies today when they beat them in the play-in game. They haven't stopped. They couldn't stop the Sixers without Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. They couldn't stop the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard or Beverly or Lou Williams for half the game or whoever else they were missing. I just don't see their defense ever catching up to their offense to really pose a huge threat. I think they could win a game, maybe even two, honestly. But I think overall the series just doesn't seem like it would be that close. It just seems like they might be able to extend the series because Lillard can do some crazy things and win you a game because he scores 50 on you.
Yeah, so Portland's defense, and I know points per game really isn't a great indicator. I don't know the defensive efficiency for Portland's bubble game so far, but in their games they have given up 135 points, and then they gave up 128 points, and then 102, then 115, 122, 121, 131, 133, and then today 122.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. Like, I totally agree that, I think the Lakers should not overlook this team. I am not concerned too much about the matchup. But whenever you have a guy like Damian Lillard who is capable of just going ballistic for an entire series, even though I really wonder how much he has left in the tank because these bubble games he's had to do so much and play at such an incredible level just for them to beat some of these above average teams. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Lakers are pretty thin on the perimeter, not having Avery Bradley. Rondo's out, but I didn't really want Rondo guarding either guard for the Blazers anyways. Caruso, seems to be fine. KCP seems to be fine. They're a little banged up, but they should be good to go. Basically, the Lakers got through the bubble games. The main thing we kept saying was just get through them healthy, and it seems like they've done that. So, but Portland's defense, man, they don't have anybody I think that can guard Anthony Davis, and I don't think they have anybody that can guard LeBron James. And
you don't think Melo's gonna get it done?
Look, I think it was Spencer Dinwiddie that tweeted out like. Oh, Carmelo's looking forward to that, or he wants that LeBron matchup. And I was like, yeah, I guess humans do tend to want things that are very bad for them sometimes. So
I'm going to go out on a limb and say I believe LeBron also wants that matchup.
Listen, for the Lakers, I think the Lakers have gone through the motions for the most part in these bubble games. The offense has certainly seen their fair share of struggles. But if there was honestly a perfect matchup for them in the first round to get their offense going, this was it. The Lakers haven't seen this Portland team with Nurkic back in the lineup, and it's going to take him, a lot more time to kind of get going again because he did suffer a very gruesome injury, and I think there's a mental aspect of that really you have to get over, which is really hard to do, especially when it's a leg injury. And I just don't think, from what I've watched with them defensively, he's been very, very bad, which is but man, if the Lakers play AD at the 5, like Davis at the 5 is just going to be a problem for Nurkic. And I don't know, I could see the Lakers honestly hunting the two Portland guards as well and making Lillard expend more energy on defense by trying to, they could run some pick and rolls with LeBron and whoever Lillard is guarding to try and, force a switch. Yeah. And then if that happens, then you can put Lillard in a pick and roll with LeBron and AD getting Lillard and Nurkic as the matchup. The Lakers are going to feast on that all day. So plus we saw enough during these bubble games, during the seeding games, that the Lakers can lock down when they want to. Obviously, Lillard lit them up in LA. And that was kind of what was needed in that game. Like Lillard had to go nuts in that game, and it was also a very emotional game for the Lakers, obviously, because it was Kobe's tribute game. And the Lakers really battled in that game too, and had an opportunity in the fourth to really go and capture that game, and just couldn't quite do it. But yeah, I totally understand why people think that Portland can cause problems, because Lillard is just the type of guy that can will his team to a win. The problem is he's running into two guys that are probably top 5 players in the league right now, and his team also doesn't have anybody that can defend those two guys. Yeah. So I don't know. They've been getting by on outscoring teams and scoring in, large quantities. In the playoffs, that just doesn't fly. Like, defense ultimately wins games in the playoffs, and the Lakers were a very good defensive team this year, finished 3rd in defensive rating or defensive efficiency, whatever you want to call it. Like you said, I think this series is anywhere between 4 and 6 games for the Lakers. I'd be kind of surprised if it honestly goes 6. Hey, you never know. It is the playoffs, and like I said, don't overlook this opponent, because they have been in playoff mode since these seeding games started, and I think a team like that can be dangerous. And this Portland team, I mean, if they're hot, they're very tough to beat. If you got guys like CJ McCollum, going nuts along with Lillard, Gary Trent has shot the ball really, really well. And, Nurkic, as much as I, think his defense has been pretty bad in these games, his offense, he's still a skilled offensive player, especially for a big man. So, they've got some weapons offensively, and I think they're just going to have to try and outscore the Lakers and hope the Lakers continue to miss open looks, because, man, the Lakers are going to get a ton of open looks.
And the other thing with the Blazers is, if I were a fan of them, I would be concerned at how few reliable players they have. I think exactly what you're going to get from Dame every night, pretty much. Even if his shot is off, he gets to the free throw line and he gets you buckets like he did today. And what you're going to get from Nurkic for the most part, with the injury, coming back from injury. He had a great game today, and offensively, he's, I think, going to give AD some trouble, because he's kind of a crafty dude around the rim, and it's going to be up to AD to not get into foul trouble when he's guarding him. But defensively, like you said, he to me, he has a penchant for being out of position at times, and he's kind of a slower footed guy. He actually he reminds me a little bit of when JaVale struggles defensively for the Lakers, where he's kind of in between the guard and the big, and he's not really guarding either one. I kind of see that with Nurkic, but the difference is JaVale is athletic and long enough that he can kind of recover at times, and Nurkic can't really do that. And having watched a lot of that series between the Pelicans and the Blazers a couple years ago, Anthony Davis really just destroyed Nurkic for that reason, and he was really smart about kind of like delaying his cuts to the rim at times, just so that it gave his point guard a better option to pass him the ball. But outside of those two guys, McCollum is a great player, but I don't totally buy into relying on him as like a secondary creator if the Lakers try to take Dame out of the game by trapping him, especially right now with his back injury. And then even beyond that, now you're looking at Melo as your next guy, and you never really know what you're getting with Melo. Their bench is super scarce. They have guys that can contribute, like Gary Trent Jr. I thought Wenyen Gabriel had a great game today, but he only got trusted to play like 9 minutes, and that's with Zach Collins only playing in the first half. I think Nurkic played something like 41 minutes today, and it seemed like they were going to lose the game in the 7 minutes that he didn't play. That's how bad their bench is. Like, they need those guys. They need Lillard and Nurkic and McCollum playing 40-plus. Carmelo played 38 minutes today. Like, they needed that from him, and he wasn't even really having a great game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, looking at, like, the box score for today, I mean, they had 9 guys play, but so they had Lillard play 44 minutes, McCollum played 44 minutes, Nurkic played 40, Carmelo played 37, Zach Collins, who also started left due to injury, played 7, Gary Trent Jr. played 35, and then the other 3 bench guys that played, Hazonia played 6, Whiteside 13, and Gabriel 9. So really just 5 guys that played heavy minutes. Yeah. Whiteside after that had the most with 13 minutes. That's
those were some brutal 13 minutes, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Just trying to get his 2K rating up, man. But no, I just don't think that's gonna fly. I think Portland. I kind of wonder at what point they're going to run out of gas. And Lillard especially, I think maybe today was one of those games, because you look at his shots. He had 6 of 15 today, 14 of his 15 attempts were from the 3-point line. Like I think he's trying to save his energy as much as he can because he's had to do so much for this team down the stretch. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Kobe back in that 2012-2013 run, where he just basically willed that Lakers team to a playoff appearance. But you could just tell how gassed he was and just exhausted at times, and how hard it was for him to do that. So I see that a little shades of that with Lillard, and I don't know, man. With CJ McCollum's back injury, Nurkic being in his state right now, coming off of that injury and a long layoff, I just, like you said, the depth, man. The depth is just, the Lakers actually have guys off their bench that can come in and be contributors. And I don't know. I wonder at what point this Lillard especially, but the Portland team just runs out of gas because they've had to scratch and claw for all these games. Even these games that like the Clippers tried to lose on purpose. Yeah. Like it was very blatant that they take out all their best players in a close game in the fourth quarter and they still won. But they're just, it seems like it's been a hell of a task for Portland, which credit to them for winning these games. I don't want to take anything away from them, but it's been a hell of a task for them to really kind of squeak by in these games and really just barely hold on. And you're going up against LeBron, who I think has just been kind of going through the motions, just basically trying to stay healthy, and just he's going to turn it on in these playoffs. And I think AD, we kind of saw some similarities, and I just think the Lakers are ready to erupt, and I think it's go time now. I think this is what they've been waiting for since back in March, ever since I think once they beat the Bucks and the Clippers, I think that was games against those guys was like validation for them. And I think from that point on, their focus was, all right, like let's get to the playoffs and we know we can do this thing. So I think that it's been a long time coming, but I never want to count out a hot team that's been in playoff mode for now 2 weeks now. And, they've got an electric superstar that can go off for an entire series, but the way they play defense, I just don't see it, man.
And they made the Western Conference Finals last year with mostly the same core. I think they lost some really important players, and like Aminu and Harkless, and especially for this series against the Lakers, those were guys that could have at least tried to slow down LeBron. And they don't really have any wing defenders anymore. But it's still a really dangerous team. I don't think they're great, but I think they're better than their record. And I think Dame going off on any given night, and even McCollum going off on any given night, and Nurkic giving some troubles down low, that's enough to win you a game or two in this series. And I think, I think it's a good test for the Lakers. And I don't remember if we talked about this on the podcast or outside of a podcast, but it might be a blessing in disguise for the Lakers that they get to get tested early on, play a team that has the potential to give them some troubles and win a game or two, rather than it being an easy sweep, because now it's getting you it's like we talked about, their offensive rhythm I think will be a lot better in this series just because of how badly Portland defends, but also it's going to need to be at a high level because of how good they are offensively. And I think that's going to make every possession matter to the Lakers. And if they do a great enough job, and if they figure out how to slow down Lillard in this series, then that's something that can help them slow down Harden in the next series if the Rockets advance. So I think, I'm pretty pumped up about them getting this opportunity to play a pretty good team with one of the best superstars in the league, and having that sort of be a little bit of a springboard into the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. I just keep looking at Nurkic guarding AD, or a banged up Zach Collins guarding AD, and Carmelo guarding LeBron, and I just keep wondering. The Lakers should honestly have a field day in this series offensively and defensively if they play at the intensity that we know that they can. And Kuzma keeps playing good wing defense. Hopefully the underdog Lakers can upset the 8 seed Portland Trailblazers, because man, NBA Twitter, if you are on Twitter and like you follow NBA Twitter, you would think the Lakers are primed to get swept out of the playoffs here. So
it's crazy. I've never seen that, and I'm not even doing like they only say this because it's the Lakers thing. I've never seen such hype over an 8 seed. And, like, it's not the majority of people saying the Blazers are going to upset the Lakers by any means, but, like, there's a pretty significant amount of people that think either they are going to upset them or that they're going to give them significant problems. And I think there's a possibility. Here's my official prediction. I think there's a possibility that it goes 6 games, but that the 2 games the Blazers win are by, like, a combined 5 points, and the 4 games the Lakers win are by, like, 15 points a pop. I think it's that. It feels like that kind of series to me.
Okay, so you're saying Lakers in 6?
Yeah, I'll say that. I'll say the Lakers pretty much blow them out in 4 games, but lose 2 games because of Lillard just being who he is.
I'll give Portland a game.
Okay.
I'll say Lakers in 5 because I think there's going to be at least a game where Lillard is just unconscious and just goes nuts from 3, and they probably get some guys like CJ and Gary Trent who also hit a lot of threes, or Carmelo or somebody, and they just basically outscore. So I'll give Portland a game. I think it's such a for the Lakers as an offense, and I think their defense can be in the form that it needs to be to slow Portland down enough. I mean, even if you let Lillard go off, if you can slow down the other guys or vice versa, I think you're going to be just fine against this team because they just don't play defense. So, all right. Those are our official predictions. Let us know in the comments on YouTube what you think this series is going to be. Do you think the Blazers are going to upset the Lakers, or do you think the Lakers are going to make quick work, or whatever? I want to hear it. So drop in a YouTube comment, and we're going to take a quick break right now, though. When we come back, we're going to talk about the overall picture of the Western Conference playoffs and the Lakers' potential path to the NBA Finals. Today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. The team of professionals at the Tax Defense Group are passionate about helping taxpayers resolve their tax debt. Their services include basic tax preparation, tax audits, resolving large tax debt, and more. They actively represent taxpayers throughout the entire USA. If you need help resolving your tax issues, contact the Tax Defense Group. Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973 to get started. That number again is 800-850-7973, and you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Writer Junkie. Are you thinking about starting a business or a side hustle? For all businesses to be successful, you need a website. Writer Junkie offers website development, content writing, and SEO services for business websites. Call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. We recently launched our website, ucaststudios.com. With articles about sports, special interest topics, and more, we have some cool stuff on our site. To read our content, please visit ucaststudios.com. All right, so we know the Lakers' first round matchup is the Portland Trail Blazers, but what about the rest of the playoff bracket? So I'll run through it for any of you that might be fans of a team in the Eastern Conference. I don't know why you'd be listening to a Lakers podcast, but hey, we appreciate you. In the first round out east, we got the Bucks against the Magic. We've got the Pacers and the Heat as the 4-5. We've got the Celtics and the 76ers, who I feel like run into each other all the freaking time. The Raptors, your Raptors against the Brooklyn Nets.
Wait, I have an official prediction. The Nets are going to win Game 1 of that series. The Raptors will win the series, but the Nets are winning Game 1.
Probably, yeah. That'd be classic Toronto. In the West, we have the 1-8 matchup. The Lakers against the Blazers. The 4-5 is the Rockets against the Thunder. 3-6 is the Nuggets against the Jazz. And then the 2-7 matchup is the Clippers up against the Dallas Mavericks. So, Honi, the seeding changed quite a bit based off of what it was compared to what it is now. How are you feeling about the Lakers' path to the finals? I mean, basically, if they get through Portland, they got to go through Houston or OKC, and then if they do that, odds are they're going to play the Clippers. And then, I mean, if the 1 seed in the East makes it all the way through, then they get the Milwaukee Bucks or possibly the Toronto Raptors. So, how do you feel about this road to the playoffs? I mean, I personally thought it was pretty favorable coming into the bubble. Yeah. Changing it around kind of changes the equation quite a bit. But what do you think about it?
I think if things go as we expect and there's no significant injuries or anything of the sort, this seems like legitimately the toughest road they had to go through to get to the championship. The Blazers, like we said before, are, I think, head and shoulders the toughest team they could have played as an 8 seed. And in the second round, I think if the Rockets do come through, I think the Rockets are a really tough matchup for the Lakers. And to me, they're the third best team in the West. And then after that, obviously, it's probably the Clippers. It's actually really interesting to me because I think both the Lakers and Clippers, to me at least, I think they got the next two teams that they least wanted to see. I think the Lakers would have much preferred to have the Nuggets in the second round. That just seemed like a way better matchup for them. And to me, I think the Nuggets can give the Clippers a little bit more trouble than the Rockets would have, just because of their size down low and what Jokic can do. So to me, yeah, it is a pretty tough road. I don't necessarily know that it's going to go chalk how we expect. I think OKC can give Houston some trouble, especially with Westbrook probably out for a game or two. And if that happens, I think that's really favorable for the Lakers. I think the Thunder are a much easier matchup for them than the Rockets would be. But it's both a little demoralizing because it makes it a lot harder to see the Lakers win a title. But I think if it does happen, it would just make it even more cherished because it's, you're beating the best teams to get to become the best team, and hopefully that happens.
Hey, you got to beat the best to be the best, right? So If the Lakers do go through Portland, one of the more hyped 8 seeds in NBA history, no offense to them, but man, they've gotten so much hype. Like, I've never seen a team enter the playoffs under 500, and I know they've had injuries and stuff, but like get hyped up to beat the 1 seed that just was the 1 seed pretty much the entire season. Yeah. But if the Lakers go through Portland, another NBA Twitter darling in the Rockets, and then the Clippers, and then the Bucks or the Raptors, I don't want to hear a single peep about an asterisk title. Because, like, NBA Twitter has been hyping up at least those 3 in the West as, like, and that's probably the Lakers' most likely route to the NBA Finals. And, like, if they go through it, I don't want to hear it because you've been hyping up all 3 of those teams. I don't want to count out OKC at all. I do agree with you. I think the Lakers, that's a better matchup for them than the Rockets because the Rockets are just a funky matchup. I think the Lakers could figure it out. I mean, we've only really seen that matchup one time. The game that the Lakers played the Rockets here recently. I mean, well, obviously we're in a full strength, and I mean they were kind of one of those games they weren't really taken seriously and just getting some other guys some reps and stuff like that. So. But I think the Rockets did lose the season series to the Thunder 2-1. Yeah. I think I was looking at that, and I think that's what it was. Plus, that series is just going to be fascinating because you had the trade between those two last summer with Chris Paul going to OKC for Russ. Plus, there was a bunch of picks thrown in there, and Chris Paul has been playing great basketball this year. So it's kind of funny that they are meeting up in the first round. But I thought the Clippers were the big winners in basically how the seeding unfolded. I think you said that this was probably the toughest way it could unfold for the Lakers, and I do agree with that. Outside of the Clippers falling to 4, there was kind of a slight possibility that would happen, but Clippers hold firm at 2. So, yeah, coming in, I mean, I think the 4-5 matchup was the Jazz and the Thunder, which the Jazz, I think the Lakers would roll through. I think, honestly, the Lakers would probably beat the Jazz easier than they would beat the Blazers.
I 100% agree. And I did a poll on Twitter a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, just asking, like, Lakers fans that, and they agreed that they wanted Utah over Portland.
Yeah, no, it was just that's just a bad matchup for Utah. The Lakers just basically for. So I was excited about that possibility, but we don't get that now. And I was especially hoping that the Clippers had to go through the Rockets and then the Lakers. Although I think they do match up really well because they're very wing heavy, and the Rockets are basically all guards and wings now. So yeah, it's going to be a tough road. I think it's very doable. I still think the Lakers could absolutely beat the Rockets. It is a funky matchup, but I do think that LeBron is going to have his way in that series, and I think the Lakers will figure out a plan with Anthony Davis to really attack them. I think when if they do run into the Rockets, it should be less about posting up Anthony Davis and more dribble penetration and getting to the bucket because they've got nobody on the offensive glass that can keep him away from the basket, and that's where I think he could really clean up. I mean, you could, throw some post-ups in there, and you could, run cutters or, find shooters off of double teams if he's passing the ball well. And just ultimately what I kind of noticed early on in that game was, like, if the Lakers just get going towards the basket, basically a guy like LeBron, they'll be just fine, because they're either going to get layups because the Rockets have no rim protection, or they're just going to get the ball up on the glass, and AD can, or maybe even JaVale and Dwight can get, to lose balls and, get putback opportunities. So it's a tough road, but I do think the Lakers can win against anybody that stands in front of them. I think this team has been waiting for the playoffs, and I think LeBron is about to elevate his play quite a bit. And I think we're going to get playoff LeBron, and I'm very excited to see that in purple and gold, because after watching him, I mean, just these basically his whole career, but first in Miami and then in Cleveland, man, the way that guy just elevated his play every playoff run was just unreal to watch. And I'm excited we get to see it in purple and gold. Like, yeah. It should be a lot of fun, and I think Davis can play off of that, and they can just kind of feed off of one another, and all they need is kind of one or two guys to step up here and there, and I think Kuzma can, fit that billing. I'm a lot more confident in Kyle Kuzma than I was a couple of weeks ago. I think Danny Green is going to step up. I know people have been kind of frustrated with him, but he's played in a number of big games before, so I think some playoff games with no fans in the stands isn't going to be a problem for him. Plus, I mean, you got some other guys that have been there and done that. Dwight Howard's been there and done that. JaVale McGee's won titles, although I don't think he's going to play a ton of minutes. I think they're going to be just fine. So I'm excited for this. I'm ready for the playoffs to start. Tuesday is the first game. I believe it's at 6:00 p.m. Pacific time. Basically, we don't have to worry about the Lakers playing in the afternoon on a weekday, which is really nice. They're going to have primetime games, I think, all the time. So first up is Portland, and then we'll kind of see from there. But I'm just excited, man. Really excited.
I'm both very nervous, because this is going to be such a weird atmosphere with no fans, and I don't know how exactly it's going to be elevated to that playoff atmosphere that we all love. Obviously, the players are going to be hyped up for it, but without the crowds, it's going to be really, really strange. But yeah, like you said, seeing LeBron get to that mode in a Lakers jersey is going to be a whole lot of fun. And I think Anthony Davis has been just an incredible playoff performer when he has made it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does on hopefully a very, very long run into, I was going to say June, but into October or whenever the hell it's supposed to actually end. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and hopefully all the guys can step up and win us number 17.
It's also going to be really cool, I think, to see a playoff run where there's not one team that's head and shoulders better than everybody else.
Yeah,
I think there are three teams. Maybe you could throw Toronto in there as well. That are the three legitimate contenders. Toronto, I think, is not far behind those guys because they're so well coached, and they're deep. They're really deep. They just get contributions from everywhere. But it's nice to kind of see a team like the Juggernaut Warriors with their freaking ridiculous lineup that they had not be in the way and in the picture this time. So it'll be a lot of fun. We are going to have podcasts hopefully after every game. Should be fun, man. Should be fun. Tuesday it starts back up. So, all right. It's going to do it for us this time. Like I mentioned at the start of the podcast, guys, be sure to like this video if you're watching on YouTube, and you can subscribe to Lakers Outsiders and UCast Studios on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow our socials, Twitter and Instagram at Lakers Outsiders. And like us on Facebook and get all of our content at outsiders.com. Follow Honi on Twitter at HONIAHM. I mean, you can look for him on at Raptors Outsiders. I don't know if it's up yet or not, but you can also follow me as at Gary Kester. It's a work in progress. You better get it up before the playoffs. That's all I'm going to say. So
no, but it's going to get started after game one of the first series. Much like the Raptors, they show up.
That's fitting. That's fitting. All right, we're getting out of here. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we might see you before Tuesday's game. We're kind of talking about possibly doing just a podcast solely about the Portland matchup, so keep an eye out for that. If not, we will definitely see you Tuesday night after game 1. So let's go Lakers. And until next time, this is Gary Kester with Honi Ahmadian and the Lakers Outsiders signing off.
Shout out to Lakers and Blazers legend Michael Thompson.